Let's get to water.
Yes.
Okay. We clearly have a shortage. We have a drought, but it seems like we've had a drought virtually every year in the state of California. Let's talk about what you think will solve the problem here for the West Side farmers, for all of us who are in the Valley.
Well, first of all, California's water system's broken, and it has been for some time. The effort with the state legislature this year with our colleagues on a bipartisan basis with Governor Schwarzenegger was I think, significant. Now, if we can implement it, of course, that's the big if, we will go a long ways toward resolving California's long-term water needs, focusing on additional water supply, because we have 38 million people living here and we have a water system designed for 20 million people. In addition to that, we've got to fix the plumbing in the Delta, which is the linchpin of how we move water from the northern portion of the state through the San Joaquin Valley down to Southern California. And that plumbing system is broken. The proposal that passed the legislature would fix that. On the federal level, we have conflicts between what we call a regulatory drought based upon biological opinions that we feel are flawed and don't take into account all the factors impacting the species. We're trying to work through that both legislatively and through Judge Wanger's court here in Fresno. We'll see what happens there. But, you know, Mark Twain, over 100 years ago when he was a reporter for the Mariposa Gazette, observed in the West that whiskey was made for drinking and water was made for fighting. And what we've seen in this horrific drought that we're facing that has devastated my district on the west side, where I have communities that have 34, 36% unemployment. When you look at the eyes of farm workers and food lines in the richest nation in the world that normally would be working to put food on America's dinner table in food lines, and you see these family farmers who I've known for generations. Part of my family farms in Westlands. I farm in the Kearney Park area, fearful that they're going to lose their entire family's investment. It's fearful, it's frustrating, and it creates anger, and I understand it clearly.
Well, is it as simple as turning the pumps on so the farmers can get the water, because they don't know if they're going to get water? Bankers will not lend them money if they don't know if they're not going to get water for next year. So we could go another year with the same situation, get even worse. Is that possible?
Well, there is leeway in terms of, many of us believe, the water managers of Westlands and Friant water users, in terms of the flexibility to pump more water out of the federal pumps and the state pumps. That flexibility was not utilized last spring or this summer to the extent that we thought it should have been. We're giving them another opportunity to try to utilize that flexibility. But it gets much more complicated because water is based upon water rights, and those water rights are based upon seniority. And certain projects that came in later in the 20th century have junior water rights. So the pumps are on, but, you know, it's confusing because people say, well, gee, the east side got 100% of their water allocation, the west side got 10% of their water allocation. Why is that so? Well, it's based upon seniority of water rights. So, and water districts get their water from different sources, and that has to be taken into account. But we're going to do everything we possibly can to assure that the west side has a better allocation of water next year than they had this year. And it's every day I'm trying to get more water for this valley. All of the colleagues, really on a bipartisan basis. It's not a partisan issue. It's an issue that, frankly, based on region, where you live and where you don't, and what your water allocation is and what it isn't. And it makes it for tremendous uncertainty, and it's created a crisis, a tremendous crisis in our valley.
For quite some time, it's felt like no one else heard the pleas from the farmers, the farm workers, those who work here in the valley. Finally, the nation and even, frankly, other parts of the state are starting to get it, or they're starting to at least hear the issue. Sean Hannity helped on a national level, bringing his show here from Fox. You were booed during that show. Why do you think that happened?
Well, I think it's the fear and the frustration. But I think we need to remember the last drought that we had in California was between 1988 and 1993. It lasted for 6 years. We're in the third year of this drought. There are a number of factors that are different. We have 8 million more people in California today than we had during the last drought. We have restrictions on the ability for the federal and state projects to operate. We've lost water during the ensuing time period. And so all of those factors create a lot of fear and frustration. And so when you get the kind of reaction that happened in the Hannity show, I mean, I understand that. But let me be clear about this. We've been working with the water districts since day one on this effort. And every effort that they've asked us to pursue, we have pursued. And we're continuing to work on it. We meet weekly. We have a list of projects that we're trying to get online here in the next year that will provide additional water supply in the short term. And we're working to see if we can get greater operational flexibility again on the pumps. And we hope and pray that it will rain and snow in the Sierra.
Now, the government is concerned about unemployment. When you have 40 and 50% unemployment on the west side, and you're very well aware of that being a farmer yourself.
Those are my communities.
That's right, your communities. You would think, in my opinion, the government would say, okay, we cannot afford to have unemployment that high anywhere in this country. This is what needs to be done. Would an executive order by one person get that water going?
Well, it certainly, in terms of the range of the flexibility of the operation of the pumps, would make a difference.
I mean, get water flowing to the farmers so they can farm.
Well, it will. We're hoping the proposal that has been made before Judge Wenger's court could take place administratively, and it would allow up to 25 to 30% allocation under the current supply. If we get more rain and more snow, it could be more, and that's what we're trying to make happen.
What about this issue that occurred? It was very similar in Albuquerque, New Mexico, where they didn't want to affect a small fish, much like the Delta smelt right now. Environmentalists want to save that because that's the smelt's home. So they talk about this, this other area, bypassing it. Well, they bypass the whole issue very easily with a court order in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Why is it not happening so easily here?
Well, I don't know that it happened that easily. That did take place. It dealt with 100,000 acre-feet of water. It dealt with primarily an urban supply for the city of Albuquerque. Both United States senators were in sync after a period of a year or longer, Domenici and the other United Senate on a bipartisan basis. And they finally were able to get action taken. We're looking at that as a precedent. Congressman Nunes has used that example on a number of occasions. And he attempted to convince Senator Feinstein that might be a avenue to solve a portion of this problem. And it didn't go anywhere in the Senate. I mean, let's make no mistake about this. Frankly, unless we're all together on this, it's going to be very difficult to get that kind of an amendment through the Congress. So, but we're keeping everything on the table, both as it relates to our judicial tools as well as our legislative tools, and we're continuing to try to ensure that this stays a public issue and that the human impacts, the suffering, the loss of food production is not just a regional issue, but a national issue.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And how much longer can we keep discussing and talking?
Right.
Before it's too late and nothing is done?
Well, some of my farmers on the west side are trying to get their loans negotiated with their banks for the next year's crop. And banks are not going to be willing to loan farmers money unless they know that there's going to be a certain supply of water. So in terms of timing, we're talking about, for some farmers, months right now. Yeah. In terms of the longer-term solutions, as we discussed earlier, the governor's package that was approved, that will take years to implement.
Yeah. That's catch-up time. Right. Things that haven't been done over the years.
Right, over the last 15, 20 years. But in the interim, we've got to look at every water management tool that we have in our water toolbox that will bring together local, state, and federal agencies. We've been able to expedite a lot of water transfers to a tune of 600,000 acre-feet of water this last year. It's not inexpensive water, let's be clear about that, but that was important. We're looking at providing water from the refugees so that water can be made available for farmers. We're going to start construction of a project that's called the Intertie Project here early next year. So we're moving on a whole host of projects that will provide interim and short-term relief.
Can the smelt be raised somewhere else in hatcheries? I mean,
well,
if people are concerned about the smelt, so we can get the water, is that an option? I mean,
well, I think it is an option, but there are other options that we've asked, and that's why the National Academy of Science, we wanted to get a third-party credible group of science, a group of coalition of water agencies have made this request. Senator Feinstein and I carried the legislation. They will propose a 6-month interim report as to what are the other factors involving the smelt, the salmon, and the other decline of fisheries in the Delta. There are so many other factors that are impacting that, and for us to be blamed for it is frankly irresponsible. And we believe that the National Academy of Science report will prove that as a point. But in the interim, we've got to do everything we can to get more water here to the valley.
Yeah. Congressman Costa, we also, before our time is up in this block, want to ask you about troop buildup in Afghanistan. The
Yes.
President is expected to make that announcement tomorrow night around 5. Do you think that that is a good idea?